He walked into police stations. He sat across from psychiatrists. He told them, in documented records, that he was going to kill women and he could not stop himself. He asked to be locked up. They let him go. This is Carroll Edward Cole, and this might be the most infuriating true crime case you've ever heard. The thing about Carroll Edward Cole is not the number of women he killed, which one is too many. It's how many times he told someone he was going to do it. He walked into police stations. He sat across from psychiatrists. He described his compulsions in plain language, and then he was released anyway. Carroll Cole spent 20 years telling the system exactly what he was, and then watched them find other explanations. 13 confirmed victims later, he was executed in Nevada, and his brain was sent to a university for researchers to try to figure out what went wrong. He was born on May 9th, 1938, in Sioux City, Iowa. His family moved to Richmond, California in 1939, pulled west toward the Kaiser shipyards and the jobs that the war was generating. His father, Laverne, was drafted not long after the move, and Carroll was left at home with his mother, Vesta. Vesta Cole was an alcoholic, having affairs while her husband served overseas, and she needed her 5-year-old son to stay quiet about it. The way she secured that silence was to take Carroll to a stranger's apartment, make him watch while she slept with multiple men, and then beat him when it was over. Twisted his arms, made clear that violence was available and the threshold for it was very low. And here's the thing about experiencing something like that when you're 5 years old. It doesn't only traumatize you, it teaches you. Women, alcohol, betrayal, secrecy, pain. Carroll spent the rest of his life trying to resolve something that happened before he was even old enough to name it. His father came home from war in 1945, and Vesta's physical abuse reportedly stopped. The psychological humiliation did not. At school, peers mocked his name as feminine, adding a daily layer of rejection on top of everything else that had already happened at home. By age 7, he had strangled the family puppy and woken up with no memory of doing it. At 8, he lured a classmate named Dwayne Eugene Owen to a lake in Richmond and then drowned him. Authorities ruled it an accident. The idea that an 8-year-old could walk another child deliberately into the water was just not something anyone in 1946 was going to entertain. Carroll Edward Cole had an IQ of 152. He maintained a D+ average and dropped out before his junior year. Having a genius-level IQ does not protect you from any of that. If anything, it just means you understand how bad things are with more clarity. The Navy took him in 1957 and discharged him within a year for drinking and stealing government property. The Army gave him a bad conduct discharge in 1958 after he was caught stealing pistols. In 1960, he attacked 2 couples at a lover's lane in Richmond with a hammer and served 30 days at a county work farm. No psychological evaluation was ever ordered. Then, in January 1961, Carroll Cole walked up to a police car in Richmond, and he told the officer that he had the urge to rape and strangle women and was genuinely frightened of what he might do. The officer told him to go commit himself voluntarily, which is, even for 1961, a fairly creative response for someone describing future violent crimes in real time. He went to Napa State Hospital, where staff noted his antisocial personality and sadistic tendencies and discharged him. In 1962, Dr. Weiss at Stockton State Hospital heard Cole explain that he was afraid of women and felt compelled to kill them before he could be intimate with them. Dr. Weiss wrote this down, diagnosed a schizophrenic reaction of the chronic undifferentiated type, and released Cole on indefinite leave in April 1963. American mental health policy had been changing dramatically since the mid-1950s, when new antipsychotic medications made large state hospitals seem outdated, and state governments, glad to shed the cost, pushed patients toward community-based care. State hospital populations dropped from roughly 558,000 in 1955 to a fraction of that by the mid-1970s. The community care meant to replace all of what was never actually built. Carroll Cole fell into that gap every time and was sent back out every time. In November 1963, he married Billy Whitworth. Both of them were heavy drinkers. Convinced she was unfaithful, he burned down the motel where they were living in August of 1965. 2-year sentence, released in 1967. He broke into a Missouri home and attempted to strangle an 11-year-old girl while she slept. 5 years, paroled in 1970. After parole, he drifted to Reno. He attempted to strangle 2 women in bars and surrendered to police both times, describing each time what he had done and why. Dr. Felix Peebles initially flagged serious concern about Cole's strangulation compulsion, then revised his conclusion. Not dangerous, just manipulative, using threats to get free housing. Carroll Cole, who had twice recently attempted to strangle strangers, was handed a bus ticket to San Diego. That was the whole intervention, a bus ticket. You don't have to go home, but you have to get out of here. He arrived in San Diego and killed Essie Louise Buck on May 7, 1971. He met her at a tavern, strangled her in his car, and drove around with her body in the trunk for 2 days before leaving her on his 33rd birthday. 2 more women in Southern California followed that same year. Their bodies were never found. For the next 9 years, Cole worked as a laborer and truck driver, moving through the American West and South. There was no national database linking homicides across state lines in the 1970s. A strangulation in Las Vegas and one in Wyoming were 2 separate cases and separate departments with no reason to connect them. He kept moving, and nothing connected. He met Diana Paschal, a barmaid, in 1972, and he married her. He disappeared for a few days at a time throughout their relationship. In September 1979, he strangled Diana during an argument, wrapped her in a blanket, and put her in the closet. He lived in that apartment for 8 more days. When a neighbor reported something suspicious, police came, found Diana, and Carroll told them that she had died from alcohol poisoning. They believed him and released him without charges. He killed Marie Cushman at the Casbah Motel in Las Vegas the following month. Then he drove to Dallas. In November 1980, in Dallas, he killed Sally Thompson, Dorothy King, and Wanda Faye Roberts in rapid succession. Police found him at the scene of the 3rd death and were preparing to call it once again natural causes and release him. Carroll Cole sat down and told them everything. All 3 Dallas murders, then the ones before that, going back a decade. In Oklahoma City around Thanksgiving 1977, he claimed to have blacked out and regained consciousness to find a woman's dismembered remains in his apartment, alleging he had consumed portions of her body before disposing of it in a city dump. That victim was never recovered, and the account could not be fully verified. The confirmed total stands at 13, with the real number almost certainly higher. Convicted in Texas and sentenced to life, Cole agreed to extradition to Nevada, where he pleaded guilty to 2 more murders and asked the court for the death penalty. When the judge sentenced him to die, Carroll looked up from the defense table and said, "Thanks, Judge." He then waived all rights to appeal. His mother Vesta had died in 1984, and Carroll reportedly told people he saw no reason to continue without her as the object of his rage. The Nevada Supreme Court reviewed his waiver, confirmed his competency, and appointed outside counsel to present the mitigating evidence Carroll refused to offer: the childhood, the documented brain damage, the 2 decades of unanswered pleas. Carroll Edward Cole was executed by lethal injection on December 6, 1985, the first person in Nevada history to die that way, and the first state execution in 6 years. He was 47 and had converted to Catholicism before his death, which people debated with the usual energy. His brain was sent to the University of Nevada, Reno, where researchers looked for a physical explanation for a lifetime of violence. His case became training material for FBI behavioral profilers. The pattern of targeting women who reflected his mother's specific profile, her drinking, her perceived infidelity, that particular combination of emotional power and cruelty, all of it became a textbook example of what criminal profilers call symbolic victimology. When you look at what Carroll Edward Cole actually left behind, it's a pile of paperwork. Police reports from 1961, clinical notes from 1962, a revised psychiatric assessment from Reno concluding the most dangerous man that any of these professionals had likely ever talked to was probably just working an angle for a free bed. 13 confirmed victims and a system that heard him say in plain language that he was going to kill and decided each time that something else was more likely going on. He asked to be stopped for 20 years. Nobody even attempted. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Murder, bingeable true crime stories. My name is Joe. I'm the host. And right now is where I would normally read an email from one of you that listens. But instead of doing that today, let me send you an email, except I'm just going to say it. You listening to me right now, I really appreciate the fact that you do listen. So many of you over the years of doing this podcast, you've been here from the very beginning, a lot of you, and have stuck it out with me. The show's changed and it's morphed over the years, and you've stuck with me through all of that. Sometimes I made tweaks on the show for the better. Sometimes it turns out that maybe I shouldn't do that. And I'm specifically talking about the couple of episodes where I had the clock ticking in the background, and then later on I listened to that like, oh damn, that's actually terrible. I shouldn't have done that. And you stuck with me through that somehow. I just want to take a moment and tell you that I really appreciate those of you that listen. I appreciate those of you that engage with the content that I put on social media. I appreciate those of you that share this podcast with your friends and with your family and tell them about 10-Minute Murder. And I really appreciate those of you that rate it and review it positively. All of those things help the show grow and grow, which is why I'm still doing this podcast. I started it during the pandemic times. That's why I'm still doing it, is because it's continued to grow because of you. It's not because necessarily of what I'm doing. I'm trying to make the show better always, but I could have the best show in the entire world, and if nobody knew about it, it wouldn't matter. It's you that makes the show grow. I recognize that, and I really appreciate the fact that you helped me do that. So, thank you for listening to 10-Minute Murder. See you next time.